Hi there, welcome to the TheMathSocial math channel. Today we're going to talk all about the difference between surface area and volume of a cube. Let's get started. The first thing we are going to do is find the surface area of this cube. So the word surface area means exactly what it sounds like. It's the area of all the surfaces on this cube. So we would really just have to find the area of one of the sides. And then since all the sides are equal on a cube, we could just take that area and we could multiply it by 6 because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sides to a cube. When you think of the word surface area, you could also think of wrapping a present or wrapping paper. When you use wrapping paper to wrap the present, it would be like, how much wrapping paper would we need to perfectly wrap this cube? Keep in mind that usually when you wrap presents, you overlap some of the paper, and that would not be what we would do when we were finding the surface area of this cube. Let's get started. So the first thing you want to do is figure out the area of one of these sides. And the area of one of these squares is found out by doing length times width. And when you have a square, the length and the width are equal to each other. So I'm just going to measure the length. In our case, the length is 8 centimeters. So if I take 8 times 8, that will give me the area of one of these sides. 8 times 8 fell on the floor, pick it up, and it makes 64. So the area of one of these sides is 64 centimeters squared. Okay, the next step is to just take that 64 and multiply it by 6 so we can include all of the sides. Let's figure out what 64 times 6 is. 64 times 6 is 384. So I'm going to label it like this, 384 centimeters squared. So that means there would be 384 little squares, a centimeter by a centimeter, that would fill up the outside area of this cube. Always remember when you're finding the surface area to label it with this little 2 because that means centimeters squared. We're finding out how many little tiny square centimeters would fill up this outside area of this cube. Okay, let's try volume. When we're figuring out the volume, we're essentially asking ourselves, how many of these little cubes fit into this bigger cube? So if I put a whole bunch of these in here, how many could I fit on the inside? So the way to figure that out would be finding length times width, and we already know that the measurement of this cube is 8 by 8. Then what we do is we multiply that by the height. Length times width times height is equal to volume, and that would tell us how many of these little centimeter cubes would fit inside of here. So, as you remember from last time, 8 times 8 is 64, and then we need to multiply 64 times the height, which is also 8, to figure out the volume. So let's figure out what 64 times 8 is, and that will tell us how many of these little cubes will fit inside of this bigger cube. 64 times 8 is 512. And we were talking about those little centimeter cubes, so I'm going to label it centimeters. And we're also figuring out how many cubes can fit inside of a cube, so I'm going to measure this with a little 3 there, which means cubed. Okay, we are going to do one more example, but with different measurements. Here is my cube, and I have only labeled one of the sides because if you remember, all of the side lengths of a cube are equal to each other. The length, the width, and the height are all the same. So the first thing I'm going to do is find the area of one of the sides. And if this is 11, that means this is also 11. So 11 times 11 is 121. So I know the area of that front side is 121 inches squared. So that means 121 little inch by inch squares would fill up the front of that cube. Now, a cube has 6 sides. So really quickly, I'm going to figure out what 121 times 6 is. One sec. Okay, 121 times 6 is 726. And I'm going to label this inches squared because we were figuring out how many of those square inches would fill the outside area of the cube. The next thing that I'm going to do is figure out the volume of this cube. So remember, volume is how many inch by inch squares would fill up this cube. So we are going to take the length, the width, which is also 11 because it's a cube, and then we are going to multiply that by the height. So like we said earlier, 11 times 11 is 121, and then I am going to figure out what 121 times 11 is to figure out the volume. One sec. 121 times 11 is 1,331 inches, and we were figuring out how many cubes would fit inside, so it's inches cubed. Okay, so just to recap, when you're finding the surface area, you find the area of one of the sides, and then you multiply that times 6. When you're figuring out the volume of a cube, you are going to take one of the side lengths, multiply it by the other side length, and multiply it by the other side length. And in a cube, all of the side lengths are the same. So you basically take the side length and you multiply it to itself 3 times, which is what we did. 11 times 11 times 11. I hope that helped with surface area and volume of a cube. If it did, please don't forget to subscribe to this math channel so you won't miss anything. Bye!